Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this very important webinar presentation titled Your Personal Journey Through Retrogression. My name is Ron Hoppe. I have the pleasure of serving as CEO of Worldwide Health Staff Solutions. And again, appreciate very much each of you taking the time to join us for this live presentation today. Please know that a recording of today's presentation will also be available for future viewing on our social media channels. And I trust that you'll find the information today to be helpful and useful to you. Our approach today and our subject matter today is going to be a little bit different than your typical presentation on retrogression. I think many of you are probably very well versed in issues around the visa bulletin, issues around priority dates. There's been many different webinar presentations recently talking about what the visa bulletin says, what it means, what it doesn't mean, what projections may look like. And we're going to touch on that for just a moment. But the real focus of our presentation today, and I'm very excited to be joined by our featured presenter today, Mr. Ted Hull, who's going to spend some time walking through for you and with you how to deal with the very varied and different emotions that come with having to deal with retrogression. Everyone who embarks on the journey to the U.S. obviously has hopes and dreams of that journey being completed in the shortest time possible. And when unexpected delays or other developments arise, how do you deal with that at an emotional and personal level? I see that many of you that are joining are checking in with us and letting us know in the chat section of the screen the country from which you're joining us from. Thank you for doing that. If everyone would just take a moment and do exactly that, just let us know where you're joining from. It's always very interesting to us and important to us to see the many different countries that are represented on these webinar presentations that we do. So without any further introduction, let me just say that as we go through our presentation today, please enter your questions in the chat section of your screen. We're going to ensure that we have some time after Ted goes through his presentation, that we have time to answer your questions. We want to make sure that we're able to get to as many of those as we can. So as we go along, if you would be interested in having a question answered, please just put that in the chat section of the screen, and we'll do our very best to get to that in our presentation time today. Before I introduce Ted, I do want to just sort of level set a little bit and just make sure that we have some perspective on this issue of retrogression. So I'm going to speak to this just for very quickly for 3 or 4 minutes. CJ, if we could get to the next slide, please. So what we see here in front of us is a summary of what retrogression or processing backlogs have looked like over the past 10 years. This data is presented on a quarterly basis. So you can see in the blue bars, great variation over time. You'll see sort of starting in the middle of 2020 through to the middle of 2023. There's no blue bars there, which is indicating that the visa bulletin was current at that time. What you'll also see on this graph is 2 red lines, 2 horizontal red lines. The lower red line is at the 12-month mark. The top red line is at the 24-month mark. So you can see, just to give some perspective, right now, we're just a little bit above that 24-month line right now. But you can see sort of what the historical pattern has been here. The current retrogression is by no means the worst that we have seen, even just in the last 10 years. In fact, it's still pretty mild. It's also important to note that in that period of time where processing dates were current on the visa bulletin, actual processing times were still very routinely around 12 months. So we're just in a bit of an outlier situation at the moment, but we do expect that when the October and November visa bulletin rolls around, we're going to see some favorable progress. Next slide, please, CJ. So as I mentioned, we're now in July, and I think what we can expect, or what you can expect to see happening in the visa bulletin from now till September, probably is not a whole lot. We expect it's going to kind of stay where it's at in terms of processing dates, but again, we expect to see favorable movement in terms of processing times coming in or becoming shorter once we get into the October-November timeframe. Next slide, please, CJ. Just very, very briefly, we get this question a lot. What's happening on the legislative or regulatory front? I'm sure in other presentations you will have had information shared on the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act. That piece of legislation is pending. I don't expect there to be any legislative or substantive regulatory action taken prior to the U.S. elections, which are coming up in November. Then I don't expect any action to be taken until the new administration comes into office, which is at the end of January. So while there are legislative and regulatory reform proposals before Congress, and while advocacy work there continues, I think the expectation is we're not going to see any big breakthroughs there anytime in the next 5 or 6 months. So just real quick to kind of level set, make sure we all have a common perspective. And with that, CJ, if we can go to the next slide. It's my great privilege, and I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this presentation with Ted for a long time now. Ted Hull is a very, very experienced counselor, has worked with people in a wide variety of circumstances. Ted has also authored a number of books, most of which I have read, actually, Ted. So appreciate Ted joining us today. I see Ted just disappeared from our screen. CJ, are you in touch with Ted? CJ, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, Ron. Yeah, he just refreshed his browser.
Okay, so he'll be joining us in a moment.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So just while we're waiting for Ted to rejoin, CJ, maybe if you could see if we have any questions that have come in, and I'll do my best to answer those while we're waiting.
Okay, sure. Let me see this one. This is from Mona. She said, "Sir, my priority date was August of 2003, but it's recaptured, and I'm documentary qualified since December of 2023. What is the impact of retrogression in my case?"
So if somebody has a priority date that dates back to 2003, then that priority date would now be current. And if that applicant is documentarily qualified, they should be in queue for an embassy interview in the near future. Hey, Ted's back. Ted, I was just sharing, I don't know how much you heard, just about a bit about your background and how it is that we've been looking forward to your presentation and being together with you today. So without any further delay, Ted, I'll turn it over to you. to share some thoughts and some suggestions and insights with our guests today on how it is that they can manage, this long and winding journey through immigration to the United States. So, Ted, I'll turn it over to you. CJ, can we get to the next slide, please? Ted, are you able to hear us? Hey, CJ, let's just keep going with the questions until Ted's able to get back online.
All right, sure. Okay, let me see here. Here's also a good question. This is from Anna, and she said, "Hey Ron, is there any change of starting with a different visa like H-1B and meanwhile waiting for the EB-3 because of retrogression?"
Yeah. So H-1B visas for nurses is a big topic. If you check on our YouTube channel, you'll see we've done several webinar presentations entirely on the topic of H-1B visas. So I encourage all of our guests to check out our YouTube channel in particular for very detailed information. Theoretically, it is possible for nurses to apply for an H-1B visa, but it has some complexities attached to it, some of which are related to the applicant's qualifications, and some of the requirements being related specifically to the employer. So not every employer can do H-1B visas. Not many employers are willing to do H-1B visas because of the increased uncertainty around the processing of those visas. But it is possible. Please check out our H-1B visa presentations on our YouTube channel for more detailed information.
All
Ted,
right.
are you there? I can see Ted, but we're not hearing him. How about you, CJ?
Yeah, I can also see him, and he's moving right now, so I think it's good.
Ted, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Can you hear us? Apologize for the technical difficulties. CJ, can you maybe just send Ted a message? I think his audio is on. He's just not hearing us, and just ask him to start with his presentation.
All right, sure.
Thank you to those of you that are taking a moment and providing shout outs to your case manager. We'll certainly pass these along, and I know that they will certainly appreciate it. Just while we're waiting and we're still trying to connect with Ted, I'll take a question that's come in from Gurley. The question is there any transition support from H-1B visa to immigrant visa? Is it possible? And how long will it take to have EB-3 from H-1B? So a couple parts to this question. So first of all, is it possible to go from an H-1B visa to EB-3 visa? The answer to that question is yes. How long will it take? Well, if you have an H-1B visa, to start on your EB-3 application, the first thing you're going to need is an employer that will extend to you an EB3 job offer and will sponsor your I-140 petition. That's the first thing. The second thing, in terms of how long will it take, the answer is it depends. It depends largely on the visa bulletin and priority dates. The good news is if you start your I-140 application early enough in your H-1B eligibility period, for most countries in the world, you would be able to obtain your EB3 visa before your H-1B eligibility was to expire. CJ, any luck contacting Ted?
Oh, he's back. I think he's back. He's moving now, and I can hear him.
Ted, are you able to hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear me though?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. So Ted, why don't
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you, and I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
All right. Well, my apologies from this end. Not sure what it is, but we're talking about emotions. I have certain emotions right now, but one of the things that we just want to talk about quickly is the fact that emotions are not good or bad. Emotions are not good or bad. Okay, whatever you're feeling, you're feeling. And I like to talk about it like a gauge. For example, suppose that your car, the gas gauge on your car is almost at empty. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's really neither. I mean, if you want the gauge to be right over at full, all you have to do is sort of break the glass and move the needle. And I think your response would be, nah, that's likely not a good idea. Because really the gauge is good in that it's reflecting a reality, and that's why it's important for you to tune in to what you're feeling. When we ran our counseling office, we had a poster on our waiting room wall with about 25 small pictures. Today we would call them emojis. And then we would, they were just pictures of 25, and under each little picture, there was a word that described in one word what I'm feeling. I'm angry, depressed, elated, satisfied, all sorts of things. And so when when I'm asking what are you feeling, when you ask any, I feel like quitting, or I'm just over the moon, or they use a bunch of words. When you're tuning into what you're feeling, reduce it to to one word. What are you feeling at any given session? And eventually it turns to it can either turn inward or it turns outward. And outward is when we become when we express our anger. So just be comfortable. Your emotion of anger is not a bad thing. The bad thing comes when you start to exercise that emotion in ways that are destructive. And anger is almost invariably something that has to do with either the present or the past. Specific, you can, if you're feeling angry, you can tune into yourself. What's really going on with me right now? It's making me feel powerless. And the powerful. And um, so that, and it, one of the things that we try to do when we become angry is express it in inappropriate ways. And that's why, as I say right here on the slide, you'll see it kind of comes together in terms of becoming very angry. Now, we talked about anger and situation where it or they are doing something or causing something to happen that I feel powerless over. Whereas if we move to the slide of anxiety, anxiety invariably has to do with the future. If you're leaving your country and you're coming to the United States, and there's it's a great opportunity. It looks good, but there's anxiety. I know for me, when I fly, there's anxiety. Now, I can get angry if there's cancellations or there's lost luggage, but before I get there, there's anxiety. Will the border crossing be okay? Will my luggage get there? Will I have to sit beside someone who's extra large in the middle seat? That kind of thing. So there's always anxiety, and if you're experiencing that, it will be about the future. So want to tune into that anxiety, and you don't know what it's going to be. And say it's different than anger. Anxiety is that sense of uncertainty. I don't really know what's going to happen, and that's why we say it when you're unable to know what's going to happen in the future. It can be very, very intimidating and can I do about situations like that? How do I respond to that? I'm angry, or I'm wherever you are. You might be in the and one of the reasons that we're talking this morning is because for you it'll be an issue of emigrating from your country, and you're out of control. And Ron's talked about situations where there's all sorts of levels of bureaucracy, people you don't know and you don't see, and you don't know where their desk, and you don't know how high the stack is on their desk, and you don't know what to do, and you're feeling that sense of anxiety. And again, I keep coming back to tune in to that. How do I deal with things like for example, anxiety? How do I handle that? Well, here's what I'd encourage you to do. And even now, as you think about it, move one. What are the things in my life that I can't do anything about it? I was experiencing that just a few moments ago when I was having trouble connecting. I can do about it. And or you may find out that there's things in your life you can't do anything directly, but you can influence them. You may have a fallout with a relationship, and you say, "I really to have that relationship fixed, but I can't do anything about it now." And but you could reach out to that person. You can influence it. There are things that you can do in terms of influencing the impact of that. Maybe it's say reaching out to a person. It may be some of the things that are going on in your life, and you can those things. So I would encourage you to do that. In fact, I do that on a regular basis. Every morning, I review those list of things that are concerning to me. And right now, I have 7 or 8 of them, I suppose. And I go over them every morning and look at them and say, are there things that I'm one situation I'm just waiting for a response? I can't reach this person or this department. I'm waiting to contact me. There's I need to deal with. I need to make a decision. Nobody else can make that decision for me, and I need to work that through. And I try to keep those on a list and review them every day to go over them. And how can I respond to that? Now we're talking about dealing with disappointment. Let me say this: things are never as good or as bad as we think. And problems today will tend to diminish could be by tomorrow and next year, whatever the situation is. We understand they are never, I don't know how to tell you this, but things are never as good as they are. You can be ecstatic today, those likely sooner rather than later. And so how do we deal with that disappointment? Well, one of them is, and Ron was talking about that, you had that graph, Ron, about the backlog of visas and so on. And, you went back years, and it's just a cycle. At some points there's none. At some points there's no waiting time, or there's months and months and maybe years as you're dealing with that, and it comes and goes. And this is part of that cycle. It's almost like dealing with the stock market. It's up and down. And so I'd encourage you to do that. Riding the wave of disappointment, recognizing that today there are going to be things that excite me, and today there are things that are going to disappoint me. And I recognize that, and to adjust myself for that and what the expectations are, and focusing on the big picture. What's the big picture down the road? And it's not just a job, it's not just employment, it's not just moving, but it's making an attempt to advance your career, maybe an improved life situation, or even an improved family situation. And just encourage you to focus, like I say, focus on the future. And so as you do that, you will see that you can make those kind of changes. So let me just back up to underscore. I would encourage you right now, just either on a piece of paper or in your head, to just jot down the things that you're concerned about, and decide, can I do something about it? Can I control it, or can I do nothing about it, or can I at least influence it? And one of the thought is just on the next slide is dealing with people who inflame you. Be careful about the people that you talk to. And you want to talk to people who are realistic, but not people who are going to make your situation worse. Let me give you an example. You're something and you meet with a friend, they tell you you're right, it's absolutely horrible. And do is inflame you. And what you want to do is to hang around people who will encourage you and get you to. And by the way, be that kind of person. Don't be the kind of person that discourages people. People hang around you, and it's frustrating to be around you because of what goes on, or you want to be that positive person as well. And remember what you're thankful for. You are in a process, each of you is in a process, as I understand it, of looking to take your education and use it to your advantage to better your life. Folks, there are millions, billions of people in the world don't have the education that you have. They don't have the opportunities that you have. Be thankful for what you have. And that doesn't mean stay stuck. It just means let's be thankful for what we have, and then focusing on what you can do going forward, and again, talking to people who are positive people, and be that positive person. One thing I want to emphasize on our very last slide that we've actually already talked about, but let me restate it, and that is that third piece, and that is, what are the things that I can control? And you've talked about it. I mean, there's things like your certifications, English score, but there are other things. There are things like your diet, your exercise. What are the things in the midst of your whatever frustrations you're experiencing? I just have a whiteboard that I keep by my thing that's my file cabinet that I jot things that I need to do. Yesterday, one of them was, I need to pick up a couple of bulbs. Well, I jotted down because I've got a whole list of those little wee things that I should do, I ought to do, I better do, and I just don't get around to it. And sometimes if you can put all those things on a list, and sometimes even beside them, put a time piece. It might be 15 minutes or half an hour or something. And if you put all those things down and add them up, you realize, if I really put my shoulder to this, I could take care of a lot of those things. And in doing that, I'm going to have a feeling of control. I'm going to have some sense of I'm controlling the things I can. So in summary, I would say, number one, tune into your emotions. What am I? Remember, reduce them to a word, not to I feel like doing this, or I feel like I want to hit somebody, or I feel like I want to pull my hair out, or whatever it might be. That's an remember, tune into your feelings, reduce them to a word. I am feeling, and whatever that is, fill in the blank, and remember that that's not good or bad. It's just an is, and so use that to tune in to what's really going on in my life and deciding whether or not I can't change it, I can change it, I can't change it, period, or I can't change it, but I can influence it, or there's some things that I can do. And if there are things that you can do, don't complain about the things you can't control. Take control of the things that you can after them. So I'd encourage you to, in the midst of whatever you're experiencing, whatever stage of the visa process that you're in, take control of things that you can control, and look after yourself, take care of yourself, and trust the process, believing that the process will eventually work out. Good hands, that everything will come together in the end, as long as you are patient. So that's sort of a summary that you can take some of these things and work with them, not only in terms of this process, but in your life generally.
Ted, thanks for that. I'd like to just pick up on that last thought that you shared in particular of trusting the process. And this relates to, those aspects of things that you maybe can't control, or things that you can influence but don't ultimately have control over. And just in the context of the visa process, I think we'd all be in agreement, everyone on this presentation, that whether the processing time is 12 months or 18 months or 24 months or something else, whatever it is, I think we'd all agree it's too long, right? It's too long. But in terms of trusting the process, so if we kind of present this in a good news, bad news type of way, right? The bad news is it takes too long. The good news is the EB3 visa process is a very well established process. It essentially hasn't changed in the last 30 years. If you follow the steps, and if your attorney or whoever is representing you from a legal processing point of view, if you follow those steps, you're going to arrive and get at the destination and get the outcome that you're looking for. So again, it's a question of context and perspective. There's two sides to that coin. The bad news is it takes too long. The good news is the process works. So then by deduction, right, for those of you who maybe haven't even yet taken the first step on your immigration journey to the US, you could then be very confident in knowing that the sooner you start, the sooner someone files an immigration petition for you, right? The sooner your visa is going to be issued. That may happen in a year, it may happen in 2 years, it may happen in 3 years. But the bottom line is the process works, the system works, and if you do your part, then the only question is that element of time. So if you are joining us, and if you're participating in this presentation and you're currently in the immigration process, either at the front end, maybe you've been at this for a little while, or maybe you're just waiting for your embassy interview date, be very interested in hearing from you sort of on what your journey has been and the feelings that you've encountered throughout this process, or maybe how you're feeling or what you're experiencing even right now. If you'd be open to sharing that, I think that would be helpful to others, and we can maybe engage in a bit of dialogue around that. So I'd certainly like to invite you to share your thoughts on some of the insights that Ted has shared about, how to respond when you're feeling angry, how to respond, when you're feeling anxious or sort of in a panic mode type of time. And, invariably disappointment comes in the process, and just how to deal with that. So if anyone has any thoughts or comments they'd like to share around that, certainly please share those in the chat section. We'd be happy to chat about them. Ted, a couple things I'd like to maybe just have you speak on a little bit further. And it was kind of the last point, and that is it matters about the type of people that you hang around with, right? And I certainly find that in my work, we can deal with a lot of issues and a lot of problems, but it makes a big difference in how you approach it, right? The glass half full versus the glass half empty. Can you maybe just elaborate a little bit more on the importance of be careful of who you're hanging around with, and how those people that are around you can influence your emotions as well?
Yeah, I think that, and think about people specifically. And I actually, as I was working on this, I was thinking of a gentleman that I bumped into at a restaurant. I just happened to see him, and he sat down and told me about a whole lot of problems he was having with a construction project, a small renovation project. And I found myself feeling down, like this is not going to be, I don't think it's not helpful for me. And I tried to encourage him by talking about the fact that we actually, but I think I would actually very specifically identify people that I hang around with to um, they're going to discourage you, or they're going to be despondent and careful about the individuals you um, spend time with.
All right, thank you, Ted.
The
I
other
apologize for
thing,
the technical.
Ron,
Yes,
I
Ted,
just
go ahead.
I was thinking as you were talking, you talked about this process being, I think I would encourage 3 years. Look, try not to say, well, and like Ron says, work with 3 years. 3 years, even 3 years can go by in a hurry. So don't become too despondent.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That time perspective is so key, right? When we have a certain expectation or a certain goal in mind, and it starts to take a little longer to realize that, we think, that everything is falling apart. But when I think about 3 years, I try to think about what was I doing 3 years ago from today, and a lot of that seems like it was just yesterday. And just it gives you some sense of just how quickly the last 3 years have gone by. Now, in saying this, we don't mean to minimize in any way, the motivation that you may have to arrive and be able to live and work in the U.S. That's certainly understandable, but in the context of someone's career, 2 years, 3 years, it really does go by quickly. And again, the focus should be on, are you doing everything that you can, and are you doing those things that you are required to do in order for the process to move forward without any additional delays beyond those that are simply caused by the normal processing efficiencies or processing inefficiencies, as whatever the case may be, as we go through this process, or as you go through this process. Ted, just any other closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our guests before we conclude for this morning?
Not really, Ron, other than I would reiterate what you said. Trust the process, take control of the things that you can take control of, and leave the rest with those who can do something. And it'll be people like Ron and his staff. That'll be one thing. It'll be embassy people. It'll be government people, and leave it with them. And again, I would say yes. Trust the process, hang around positive people, and control the things you can, tuning into what you're feeling at any given point.
All right, Ted, thank you for that. And thank you to Phyllis for your comment about trusting the process and the need to be patient. I think that is a key word. I would add to patience, persistence. And if you are patient and you are persistent, you can accomplish many, many great things. I think a lot of times people miss out on opportunities in front of them simply because they lack either patience or persistence in following through on whatever it is that they've undertaken. So we'll leave everyone with that thought. Thank you for joining us today. If you would like to receive a copy of the PowerPoint slides, if you would just send your inquiry to info@healthstaff.org, we'd be happy to share these slides with you. CJ, if you'd like to just advance our slide here for a moment. Right. So again, this presentation will be available for replay on our Facebook page. Again, apologize for the technical difficulties this morning, but there you'll find a recording of this presentation. You'll also find very useful information on various immigration-related matters. You'll find information there on positions that we're currently recruiting for. So please feel free to check us out on Facebook if you're not already following us. Thank you again for your interest. Thank you for your time today. We look forward to being in touch with you again, and we look forward to bringing you further helpful webinar presentations. Please check out our Facebook page for 2 webinars that we have coming up next week. One is with the president of CGFNS, and you'll have an opportunity to learn about some exciting new programs that CGFNS is offering or is about to offer to support healthcare workers around the world. And then following that, we're going to have a very special webinar presentation with special guests from the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. Mr. Saul DeVries, who is the current labor attaché for the Philippines to the United States, will be joining me, along with some of his staff, and they'll be talking about the various services and supports and types of assistance that his office is able to offer to nurses that are migrating to the U.S. So you're gonna want to join us for both of those. And tomorrow, later this week, tomorrow, you're also invited to join us for our weekly Q&A session. And this week, the person who will be answering your questions is Amy Kerr. Amy is our Vice President of Recruiting, and she's going to share with you about how you can become a top nurse referrer. At Health Staff, we've got a really, really great referral program where you can not only share your referrals, but be rewarded for doing that very, very timely. We've got some referrers that have collected 10 and 20 referral bonus payments, and we're excited to share those. So join in tomorrow. Check out our Facebook page for our presentations next week. Ted, thank you for taking the time to share some great information with our guests today. I really do appreciate it. CJ, thank you for piloting us this morning. Best wishes to everyone. We'll be in touch